Sitting alone in a corner of a vacant cafe, I watch the tide of humanity surge past the misted glass. It is a cacophony of bustle, yet in truth, it is merely thousands of isolated islands drifting by, colliding with one another only for the sake of utility. Amidst such a crowd, the most terrifying form of isolation is not being confined within 4 prison walls. It is standing in a brilliantly lit square where no one dares to reach out and take your hand. This is an art, the zenith of strategy that the naive call by the beautiful name of politics, while those who see through the veil merely sneer, recognizing it as a primal instinct for survival. Reflect on Otto von Bismarck, a name that conjures images of blood and iron. Yet his true weapon was not merely cannons or rifles. It was the ability to weaponize fear, transforming a superpower like France into a solitary traveler on the 19th century European chessboard. Bismarck did not build physical walls around Paris. He erected invisible ones within the collective psyche of Russia, Austria, and Britain. He made an alliance with France look like a gamble where the stakes were 1,000 times higher than any potential reward. That is the essence. Fracturing an opponent's natural alliances by infecting their relationships with the virus of apprehension. At its core, whether we speak of individuals or nations, all operate on the scales of benefit and risk. When the reward is great enough, enemies become allies. But when the risk reaches the threshold of survival, even a father and son might disown one another. If you wish to isolate an adversary, do not be so foolish as to attack them head-on. Such a move only casts them as a martyr, drawing sympathy from the curious crowd. Instead, attack the opportunity cost of those standing beside them. Make the crowd perceive that to stand near this person is to court disaster, to be infected by a plague called failure. In the modern office, where plastic smiles mask whetted daggers, this tactic becomes even more ruthless and effective. Suppose there is a rising star, talented, ambitious, and a threat to the positions of the old guard. The amateur will try to disparage or criticize the opponent's ability. This is a fatal error. Criticism only betrays one's own cowardly envy. The way of the cold observer is to praise. Yes, praise, but a praise laced with venom. Laud his ambition to overhaul the entire system in front of the conservative bosses. Commend his unconventional methods and disregard for procedure to the risk management and finance departments. With just a few whispers in the right ears, the opponent's image becomes a caricature. From an energetic asset, he is rebranded as a ticking time bomb in the eyes of those who hold the power of life and death. The department head fears losing their seat to change. The accountant fears trouble from unconventionality. Human resources fear disruption from excessive ambition. Naturally, without a word being said, doors begin to slam shut in his face. Emails go unanswered. Meetings are convened in his absence without explanation, and crucial information is accidentally omitted. He still sits there, in an office of 100 people, yet he is completely sequestered. He cannot fathom why, despite his best efforts, he is being pushed to the margins. It is a quiet death, bloodless, yet chillingly absolute. Shift your gaze to the marketplace, where capital is the sole metric of truth. A rival business is soaring like a kite in the wind, bolstered by superior products and competitive pricing. To stop this momentum, cutting the kite string is a clumsy move. Making the wind stop blowing is the masterstroke. The wind here is the flow of capital, the suppliers, and the distribution partners. A Bismarckian strategist would not compete by lowering prices and hemorrhaging their own profits. Instead, they would sow seeds of doubt regarding the rival's liquidity into the ears of suppliers. A faint rumor of a payment delay, an underlying lawsuit, or instability within the leadership hierarchy is all it takes. In business, trust is as fragile as a dragonfly's wing. At the slightest breeze of suspicion, partners will immediately retreat into their defensive shells. Suppliers will demand immediate payment instead of offering credit. Banks will tighten credit limits. Major customers will hesitate to sign long-term contracts for fear the partner might collapse mid-project. The opponent suddenly falls into a cash flow crisis, not through incompetence, but because they have been severed from the resources of survival. They are transformed into disease carriers, whom everyone avoids to preserve their own safety. At this point, finishing them off or acquiring them is merely a formality of will and timing. Delving deeper into the psychology of isolation, one must understand that humans are fundamentally herd animals. The ultimate fear is not death, but being cast out from the pack. When an individual feels themselves being isolated, their psyche generates instability, confusion, and self-doubt. They begin to make mistakes. They become aggressive in self-defense or withdraw into depression. Both reactions lead to self-destruction. The practitioner of this tactic needs only to stand on the periphery, sipping a glass of wine, and watch the opponent dig their own grave in a state of panic. However, this art requires a high degree of sophistication and ruthlessness. One must leave no fingerprints. Everything must appear to be the natural reaction of the collective, the law of social elimination. If you reveal yourself as the puppeteer, you yourself will become the next target for isolation. Therefore, riding the wind to break the branch and throwing the stone while hiding the hand are essential skills that must be mastered. You must know how to use others as your messengers and leverage the interests of a third party to obstruct the second. Consider Bismarck's handling of Austria after the War of 1866. He did not humiliate them, did not seize their land, and did not flaunt military might in Vienna. He stayed his hand so that Austria would not harbor deep-seated hatred. But simultaneously, he skillfully maneuvered Austria toward the Balkans, igniting conflict with Russia. In doing so, he forced Austria to rely on Germany for survival while they were shunned by Russia. Austria was not destroyed, but they were isolated from all other options except becoming Germany's subordinate. That is the pinnacle of turning an opponent into a lonely satellite. In a corporate setting, the logic holds. There is no need to fire an opponent. Retain him, but strip away his lieutenants. Relegate him to a position that is titular but powerless, or assign him a bony project that everyone avoids. He will exist like a ghost, a cautionary tale for others, fading away in the chill of his colleagues' indifference until he resigns of his own accord. But one must also look back. What is the price of utilizing this art? When one gazes into the dark heart of humanity, manipulating the fears of others like pawns, the traveler's soul gradually becomes calloused. Emotion becomes a luxury, and trust becomes a naive concept. Around us, anyone could be a victim, and anyone could be an executioner. We turn our opponent into a solitary traveler, but we ourselves are walking a lonely path. For the one who holds the secret of isolation will never dare to fully trust another. This life, in the end, is a vast chessboard where every piece fancies itself the player. But the true player is the one who knows how to control the distance between those pieces, knowing when to converge to create strength and when to diverge to shatter a formation. To stand firm amidst the shifting currents of life, one must learn to see the invisible threads binding people together. Interest, affection, fear, and honor. To sever this thread, to reconnect that one, that is the clockwork of the world. Imagine a more concrete scenario to witness the cruelty of this method. In a major tender, there are 3 companies, A, B, and C. Company A is technically the strongest. Instead of competing technically with a we, playing the role of Company B, we'll whisper to C, if A wins, they will monopolize this market for the next 5 years. Both you and I will perish. The fear of a dark future will make C waver. At this point, we propose a secret alliance with C. Let us both bid below the floor price, accepting short-term losses to eliminate A. C agrees out of fear of being swallowed by A. But at the very last minute, we secretly leak information to the investor that C is facing financial ruin and shows signs of document fraud. The result: C is disqualified due to a tainted record, and A is eliminated because their price is too high compared to the suppressed market level. We, Company B, walk in grandly as the safest and most reasonable choice. A is isolated by price. C is isolated by reputation. One arrow fells 2 targets, birthed from the manipulation of fear and greed. Do not be hasty in your moral judgment. Morality is a social convention to maintain order, whereas in the struggle for survival, effectiveness is the only metric. Bismarck was neither saint nor demon. He was a master pragmatist. He understood that for Germany to be unified and powerful, France had to be alone. To ensure one's own safety, those capable of causing harm must be stripped of their ability to connect. A pack leader, however strong, is but a choice morsel for hyenas if separated from the pack, or will slowly succumb to hunger. Ordinary social relationships are no exception. When a malicious person spreads rumors about you, instead of arguing and explaining, observe who is listening to them. Then, create situations where those listeners see that associating with that person will bring trouble. For example, if that person often invites everyone out for drinks to dodge work, subtly leak information that the boss is taking note of the group that consistently arrives late and leaves early. Naturally, the crowd will drift away. That person will find their invitations falling into a void. They are isolated not because everyone hates them, but because everyone loves their own livelihood more. Isolation can also be engineered by granting the opponent privileges that breed division. Propose a promotion for them, but do not increase the salaries of their peers, or grant them the power to control their former colleagues. Envy and suspicion will germinate faster than any weed. They will gloat over their new power, not realizing they are standing on a sinking island surrounded by a sea of hostility. When they eventually fall, no hand will reach out to steady them. Instead, there will be extra boots to trample them down. Reflecting on it, Bismarck Strategy teaches us that strength lies not in muscle, but in position. Position is defined by one's surrounding network of relationships. The truly powerful are those standing in the center of a dense web of supporting interests, and who know exactly how to sever the opponent's network. To turn an opponent into a solitary traveler in a crowd is to deprive them of their social lifeblood. It is the most brutal punishment for a social creature. The night grows late. The vacant cafe is filled only with the strains of melancholic jazz. Looking back at myself, the one analyzing isolation, I wonder if I too have fallen into the trap of knowing too much. When one sees through every scheme, every feigned smile, and every calculating handshake, one no longer possesses the capacity to integrate into the naive crowd. We become observers, standing on the sidelines of joy, painfully sober. The loneliness of the loser is a tragedy, but the loneliness of the enlightened is a destiny. At the end of his life, Bismarck was also pushed to the margins by Emperor Wilhelm II, tasting the very sensation of isolation that he had spent his entire life gifting to his enemies. Is it the law of karma or merely the turning of the tides? It matters little. What matters is how we played our game in the moment of holding power. The wine is gone. Stand up, don the overcoat, and step out of the cafe. The biting wind strikes the face, yet the mind remains eerily sharp. The tide of humanity continues to flow, each soul burdened by its own fears, and whoever holds the key to those fears shall be the sovereign of this lonely world. Walk on, dissolving into the darkness, continuing the journey of a solitary traveler, carrying reflections as sharp as a scalpel, dissecting life in search of a few embers of meaning.